How y'all doing? So I'm gonna do a video talking about my favorite singer, the king of country music, himself, Hank Williams. This gentleman right here. So, what do you think I'm gonna say about Hank? Well, I'm gonna talk about his connection to rock and roll. So, I've read some liner notes recently that state that, well, they say that Eddie Arnold has more of a connection to rock and roll than Hank had, and that's just not true. Okay, guys like Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Ray Charles, Jerry Lee Lewis, all them guys, they weren't covering Eddie Arnold songs, earlier in their career. They were covering Hank songs. In fact, right in here, and just to let you know, those liner notes were written by Colin Escott. Quite frankly, who's written a book on Hank, so he should know better. Then again, maybe he's just not that bright. But right in here, which is this this particular Hank CD is it's called Rockin' Cheer Money. It's from the Gonna Shake the Shack Tonight series from Bear Family. This has like most of his up tempo tunes that you can think of, the hits, the lesser known ones. About the only one I can significance that I say that it's missing here is Howlin' at the Moon. But everything else is here. So, and right here, if you need further proof, a quote by Don Everly of the Everly Brothers. Hank Williams was to me the first rock and roll singer. Let's see if we can get a shot of that there. Yeah, so even Don Everly, and the thing that gets me is where I read those liner notes were in that soundtrack to that Ken Burns documentary that Mr. Escott says that. Well, you know, you're ignoring what one of the Everly Brothers said, and you're comparing said I believe the quote was more "Bye Bye Love" than "Honky Tonkin'." Well, what the hell do you think the Everly Brothers were? They were two guys that combined the two sounds, country, western, and rock and roll. That was their sound. That was the Everly Brothers sound. Those harmony, they added the harmonies, of course, but that was their sound. And if you need further proof of that, the Everly Brothers covered "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry" on one of their albums. But so it's said that one of the first rock songs, or the first rock song, was "Rock Around the Clock" by Bill Haley, right? Okay, that came out in 1955. Well, it took its melody from "Moving On Over," which Hank released, wrote, recorded, and released in 1947, 8 years before. So I mean, that beat all of them. That beat Rocket 88, which came out I think 51. It beat Fats Domino's The Fat Man, which came out in 49. So I mean, come on. So among the other songs that you'll find on this album, which I highly recommend, by the way, obviously "Moving On Over" is here. "Jambalaya," "Hey Good Looking," "Setting the Woods on Fire," "Kalijah," "Fool About You," his version of "Roly Poly," "My Bucket's Got a Hole in It," one where he says he sees the crabs and the fishes doing the bebop bee. And I believe it was Carl Perkins that said, "What was the bebop bee?" He's like, "Well, Hank knew." So, let's see. Nobody's Lonesome for Me is also on here. Pan American. Lovesick Blues. I Saw the Light. So, like I said, most of his ones that would be considered up tempo are here on that disc. So, another thing that Colin Escott doesn't seem to agree with is like, would Hank have survived rock and roll? And he doesn't think he would have done very well. It's like, well, Hank was doing these up tempo songs when most other artists weren't. Like Andy Arnold didn't really do them. Ernest Tubb wasn't doing them. A lot of these guys that just weren't doing them. That's why when it eventually evolved into the Nashville sound, that's why they didn't have too many hits. They still went out and recorded and whatnot, but you can tell it wasn't the same. But the only difference I think would be that Hank would have had to maybe do a few more than those up tempo songs that he would normally do. But I think he would have done just fine. I mean, he was a very smart man. And another person mentioned, well, he didn't like drums, and it's like, there's drums on Kalijah. So obviously he was starting to come around when it came to that. Like I said, give the man credit. Hank was a very, very smart man. But do I think he would have, do I personally think he would have done alright, when rock and roll hit? Absolutely. Another thing I think that could have happened was when Sun Records, would he have made his way over to Sun Records and signed a deal? Maybe that's possible too. You never know. So I mean, MGM was doing good, but as time goes by, things change. So he might have a couple years after signed a deal with Sun Records, made his way over to Memphis. You never know. And, Jerry Lee Lewis himself, his exact words about Hank were, "I felt something different when I listened to that man." And Jerry Lee covered Hank's songs, whether he was doing rock or country, throughout his whole life, right up till the end. As did other Sun Records proteges, such as Johnny Cash. He was another one that always seemed to be either recording Hank songs or doing them live or involved in a Hank tribute in some way. Same with Waylon Jennings. But Hank's appeal is far beyond just country music. I mean, Louis Armstrong covered a few of his songs. Great versions of the songs too. He did "Cold Cold Heart," he did "Your Cheating Heart," and he did "My Bucket's Got a Hole in It." Those are the three that I know he did anyway. He might have done more. I don't know. I like Louis Armstrong myself, so he's what he is to jazz is what Hank is to country. He's the king of jazz. Hank's the king of country, of course. But yeah. So that's what I wanted to say. So that's it. That's Hank's connection to rock and roll. Is if you listen to his up-tempo songs, um, you don't need to really go any further than honestly, you could just listen to "Hey Good Looking," which came out in '51. Is another prime example. And just listen to that where he says, "I got a hot rod Ford and a $2 bill, and I know a spot right over the hill." Well, he's singing about hot rods and going dancing, and before it was a regular thing in a rock and roll song. So he foretold what was on the horizon. It's almost like he knew. Maybe he did. You never know. Maybe he did. But yeah, Hank would have done all right in the that era of rock and roll. I think. Now the only thing I can say that probably would have brought him down is the fact that he had spinal bifida. There's no cure for that, and I don't know if you know the life expectancy of somebody that has that, but if you look it up, it's about 40. So even if he hadn't died, even if he hadn't met that fake doctor, that gave him all that shit that did him in, and he died at 29, he probably wouldn't have lived the last 40. I mean, we all like to think that he would have lived a long, long time, but people with that condition, they just don't. So it is what it is. But do I think what would be my prediction if he was in that era? Well, the steel guitar and the fiddle probably would have been phased out eventually. That was probably gonna happen anyways. But a lot of people don't realize that even though Don Helms was in the at the Canton Memorial Auditorium to do that show with him when he was on his way there and he didn't make it there, um, Hank wasn't with the Drifting Cowboys no more. That's what a lot of people don't get. The Drifting Cowboys for a time were actually backing up Ray Price. But so I think Hank would have done all right. I mean, like I said, he would have done more like up-tempo songs than he probably wanted to, but he was smart enough. He would have done what he had to do to stay in the game. Now, when the Nashville sound hit, I mean, again, you don't hear the fiddle or the steel guitar as much, or you don't hear them like you used to. Owen Bradley's the one that phased them out. That guy was a bit of an idiot. I mean, in some cases he did good things. He produced a lot of good artists and stuff, but in some of those cases he was just wrong. But I mean, steel guitars are still used in country now, so I don't think they were that much of a problem. But I mean, I like the sound of a steel guitar personally, so I mean, it is what it is. But would Hank have done okay doing the Nashville sound? Well, assuming that he stayed strictly with country, I mean, if you listen to some of those songs, like if you listen to like Patsy Cline go sing Crazy or something like that, it's really not that much of a far cry from the ones that Hank was doing a decade earlier. So I mean, I think he would have done fine. But like I said, I don't know if he would have, even if he was alive then, I don't know if with his condition if he would have lived past the mid-60s. Anyway, so I don't think he would have seen the 1970s. His music, that's one of the good things about it, is it's frozen in time. It'll be there forever. I mean, not many artists get to say that. A lot of artists that you hear now, they'll just fade with time. But he's one of the ones that's one of the very few. Maybe Elvis, or definitely Elvis is another one. Probably the Beatles are another one. Ones that are just in the stratosphere. In the stratosphere, they're so high up that they're never going to be forgotten. Where some of these guys like that are out now, like they're on the radio now. Oh, sure, they're hot now, but 20, 30 years after they're gone, is anybody going to remember who they were? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. But Hank's definitely. This is why Hank was inducted to the second year of, uh, you know, it being open into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Because it opened in '86, the year I was born. He was inducted in '87. Now, granted, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has since become, as the Sex Pistols described it a piss stain because they keep letting groups and singers in there that are not even remotely rock and roll, and ones that haven't been around that long. They're gone to the point where they're just putting whatever in there, and guys like the Big Bopper and Jan and Dean, ones that actually deserve to be in, aren't, and have never been considered. But Hank was inducted when it was still a Hall of Fame. It was still for the elite, and he was inducted under the category early influence. Well, definitely fits that early influence of rock and roll because he definitely influenced it. I mean, he was obviously influenced by the blues, and you take the blues and you take the country and western sound. That's pretty much what rock and roll is. It's a combination of those two sounds. I mean, if you listen to, you know, obviously the doo wop sounds a little different because a lot of those came from Philadelphia, and New York, and places like that. So the doo wop sounds a little different. It still has soul to it, but the ones like Fats Domino, the ones that came from like New Orleans and stuff like that. And, you could definitely hear that in their voice, that distinction. But, so Hank definitely influenced rock and roll. I'm sorry, Mr. Escott disagrees, but us real fans, we know the truth. So um, another. Show you this one more time. This is the King of Hillbilly Music 4-disc set that you can get on Hank. It's got its own booklet. It's got the liner notes in. It's an import, so it's got the liner notes in a couple different languages. One, of course, is English. I'll read this last passage to you. The last paragraph. It says, his legend and his songs have survived the passage of time, and his work still enjoys a special standing among the musicians today. Hank Williams was the idol of artists such as Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan, and well-known musicians like Sheryl Crow, Linda Ronstadt, Kris Kristofferson, and Emmylou Harris have included his songs in their repertoire, and have also recorded his works. That's very true, because Kris Kristofferson is another one that's been involved in a lot of Hank tributes. And Emmylou Harris, she used to close her shows with Jambalaya. I don't know if she still does. And the last paragraph says, Hank Williams fans jam-packed the largest of halls, and he sold millions of records, but he was also the one who first went down the rock and roll road before Elvis Presley, Brian Jones, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Mama Cass, and Jim Morrison had ever set foot on it. So there you go. That's Hank's connection to rock and roll. There's your proof right there. So yeah, this video is going to be titled Hank Williams and the Rock and Roll Connection, or something along those lines. Or Hank Williams' connection to rock and roll. Yeah, that sounds better. Show you this one more time. This is gonna shake the shack tonight. Rockin' Chair Money. So definitely get that CD too if you can. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this, and I'll see you all next time.